And welcome back to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. I am your host, as always, David Gornoski, and you can find my work at aneighborschoice.com. You can email me if you have a great idea you want to share with the world, or you have someone that's a victim of a nonviolent crime law that's put them in a bad situation in prison. You can email me at david@aneighborschoice.com. And my principle in all of my writing at all these top media sites around the world where I try to reach anybody on the left, on the right, independent, whoever, all over the world too. I just got a message from a good friend, Surat in India. He's a great fan of A Neighbor's Choice, and he's a great listener. And, you know, there's all kinds of people who they're going to have scapegoats. They're going to have their particular pet peeves. But one principle we can all come together around is that if there's no victim, then there should be no crime law against someone. If you have not used violence, if you're not stealing, you're not defrauding, you're not trying to use physical violence or any of that kind of thing, you should be left alone to exercise your freedom. That includes vices that we don't like. It includes bad speech we don't like. It includes bad habits we don't like. But that's the beauty of freedom. We allow people to work these things out and we come together with them. We can solve addictions. We can solve all kinds of problems as neighbors, not as enemies. Because when we use violence, it only creates more violence and brokenness. It destroys families. It hurts people. And so I'm so glad to speak right now with a hero, Amy Povah. She is the founder of Can-do Clemency.com. It's Can-do Foundation is what she's been her life work. Thanks for being on the show, Amy.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I was just so struck by, I saw your work prior to this big story that came out with Alice Marie Johnson, but it just really, it crystallized for me the importance of what you're doing at the Can-do Foundation. You are dedicated to helping women and men who are in long prison sentences who they need to come home. They need to be with their family. And you have been at the forefront of putting together research and working with these family members to get petitions to get to the White House, and you've done it through previous administrations and now the current one, and you're dedicating your life to helping people find clemency so they can have freedom with their family.
Well, I received clemency from President Clinton. I was serving a 24-year sentence for a drug conspiracy case, and that's what I typically focus on because I was educated the hard way, which is learning about the conspiracy law after you've become a target. And I was a target of a federal probe that was looking into my estranged husband's. He had an MDMA operation that he had started when it was legal, but he kept manufacturing it in 2 foreign countries. And I was somewhat shielded from the big picture and had already left him. I moved to Los Angeles, and we had separated a little more than a year prior to his arrest. And what your listeners may not know is that the conspiracy law was broadened in 1988 so that if you do one small thing, even a legal action, like giving somebody a car ride or taking a message over the phone that seems benign, giving that message to somebody and then somehow a drug transaction occurs out of it, even if drugs weren't referenced in the message. It may be, tell your boyfriend to meet me at this hotel at this time in this location. In fact, I use that as a reference because my roommate received 17 and a half years just because she conveyed a message to her boyfriend, which was basically that, telling him to meet somebody at a hotel in Chicago, and it was an undercover narc that conveyed that message. And I was swept up in it because I ran around collecting money that I thought would be bail money because I had kept a friendship with my estranged husband, and after he was arrested, I was kind of perplexed about what was going on, and And I did go to his aid. And long story short, because I collected some money and it wasn't all kosher, they said that I had ensnared myself in the conspiracy law, and I was looking at 20 to life. So very quickly, you can find yourself at the other end of an indictment, which is usually used as a blackmail tool. The conspiracy law and mandatory minimums are sort of an incentive that the prosecution uses to force you to cooperate with them and help them build a case, or sometimes even go out and set up other people. So I would not do it. I refused their threats to become a working informant, and it took them about 2 years, but they indicted me, took me to Waco, Texas. I got a 24-year sentence for all the ecstasy that my then-husband had manufactured, and I served 9 years out of 24 before I received clemency from President Clinton. After I got out, I started the Can-do Foundation, and here we are today.
So why did you decide to not cooperate when they were trying to get you to go along as an informant?
Well, they introduced themselves to me when I pulled into my garage, and they rushed to my car with guns pulled, and they were screaming, and it was kind of chaotic. And this was before the big SWAT raids, so they were actually wearing their just like civilian clothes. They were in like blue jeans, and they were from Texas, so most of them had on cowboy boots. But I thought I was being robbed, and they ordered me out of the car. They flanked me, took me into the house, and there was about 10 people in my home ransacking it. And very quickly,
So what's going through your heart when that's happening? You're pulling up, there's all these people with guns.
Exactly. All I could think of was that somehow evil had manifested in my home. And it's so shocking that it's hard to process what you're seeing, because it's a lot of stimulus to be coming at you all at once. And they do that intentionally. They had apparently waited until they saw me leave. I went to a meeting because I could tell they'd been in my home, for hours, as long as I had been gone. And
everything
the
was
front door
ransacked?
was in the floor. To ransack it. And they had busted in the front door, so there was just a hole. And that's a strange thing to see when they were rushing me through my house, because we entered through the kitchen, and then they took me into the living room, and they had to get a chair and set it up straight because everything was upside down and ripped and torn, and it was just awful. And but I remember seeing a hole where my front door normally should have been. And you're just processing so much that I just shut down. I wasn't really interested in communicating with anybody who was capable of doing what I was witnessing.
So you were in a state of shock, and you just couldn't process it.
Right, yeah. And they started a process, which I now know is very common because I served time with so many women, and we all shared stories, and the stories were very similar in nature, that they have a way of kind of forcing you to, I liken it to driving a steer right into the slaughterhouse, and I'm sure they use a playbook where if you won't cooperate, they start tactics, implementing tactics, which is interviewing and harassing everybody you know, talking to my employer. I also had primetime promotions, and they went to, I promoted two of the most popular nightclubs in Los Angeles, Tramp and China Club. And they went to the owners, and they were interrogating them and saying, why do you have this woman working for you? She's at the middle of a big drug conspiracy. She's under investigation. They implied that maybe I was moving drugs, and they were shocked and said, we've never heard anything like this, and that's not the case. But then they threatened them and said, we can make your life miserable. We can audit your books. And I also worked full-time for a guy who had a gas shutoff valve that shut off the gas to your home in the event of an earthquake here in California. I did the marketing for him. They made his life miserable, and
so they put
found a little glitch in his taxes.
Wow! So they put a social vice grip on you where you're being isolated. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you're being ostracized from everybody you know, and then people don't want you to come around, and and so then they do forfeitures. They seized my car. There's two ways to do forfeitures. One is purchased with illicit proceeds, and the other way to forfeit property is to say used to facilitate a crime. And
in
much
this case,
later,
you were just married to the wrong person, and even an ex-husband at that. And
later, I got to see the forfeiture papers. Much later, they didn't serve me for another year or so, but it said confidential informant. So CI number 4 said that they had a conversation with my ex-husband in the car. No drugs were there, nothing was sold, and the only thing to get my car that was necessary was CI number 4, who you don't even know who CI, confidential informant number 4 is, said they had a conversation about ecstasy in the car. That's all it said. And
so there's a lot of hearsay, there's a lot of, it's just a complete vice grip where they're trying to eliminate you socially as a pariah from everybody, including your family members, right?
Right, yeah. Well, they make life miserable for just about everyone. And then if you can't function, you get to the point where, they're trying to break you.
Wow.
And if you don't have transportation, especially in a city like Los Angeles, I eventually rented a car, and after a while, the rental company asked me to return it, and I asked why, and they said, well, the stickers are outdated. We need to put different stickers on the license plate, which wasn't true.
Wow.
By this time,
so you can't even rent a car.
Harassed.
You can't even rent a car. Ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with Amy Povah. She's the founder of Can-do Clemency Foundation. She's at the heart of a lot of these clemency stories you're hearing. We'll be right back. We'll find out what it was like to go through this ordeal on A Neighbor's Choice Radio. I'm David Gornoski. We'll be right back on News Radio 102.5 WFLA.